Allah. They didn't even delve into that much anymore after a couple of centuries. So you find most of this discussion really in the context of just exploring the Qur'an's beauty in that subtle capacity. What adds complication to this, however, is the fact that it's not being expanded upon or explained or articulated by the Prophet ﷺ, only by the scholars who are exploring the language later on, right? And yet his choice of words are always on point because they're not his. They are Allah's words. They're Allah's words. You know, an author has a time to write something and edit it and modify it and edit it and modify it. With the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, with Qur'an, it's memorized as it is, cover to cover. And then there is no editing, modification. This is it. It's just memorized as it is. So this is one, profound example of, I did have forgiving in there. Last example. I wanted to give you a couple of things. There's some papers against this. I did some research on my own. Allahu Alam, there it is. Okay. There's a man by the name of Muhammad ibn Tariq al-Suwaidan, or Tariq ibn Muhammad al-Suwaidan, who did a paper on did a lecture series, 12 hours on the miracles of the Quran in Arabic, in Kuwait. Very interesting paper. He did over 50 miracles scientifically. But I want to share with you the word count in the Quran. I verified 5 of these and then I gave up. So there's no point. You can verify them if you want, inshallah. I may have some of the numbers wrong, but I know they're equals. I may have them because I just listened directly to the lecture. I didn't get it off a website or anything. Okay. I didn't share the coolest one with you yet. Sorry. 2 more. This is one, and then I'll share one last one with you. The word prayers in the plural, salawat, prayers, is mentioned, interestingly, in the whole Quran only 5 times. Which of course matches what? The number of times you have to pray. The word dunya, which means this world, is mentioned 15 times. And so is the word the hereafter. Akhirah. Angels are mentioned 99 times. And these are not, word counts that are sort of imposed on the Quran. Because the Quran is not, there are no versions. There's one text. And word searches were done in classical texts. Ma'ajim, Kitab al-Ma'ajim. And there are other books that did word counts of Quran. They didn't do it to find equals. But what this scholar did was, as he was looking through the word counts, he was finding some equals. And he just listed them. You can take it as a miracle, you can't, but certainly it's something very unique and profound. Angels and devils are mentioned an equal number of times in the Quran. Life and death is mentioned an equal number of times, both 145 times. The people and the messengers are mentioned an equal number of times. Why? Because the messengers came for all the people. Iblis, Iblis is the old name of Shaitan, and seeking refuge from him, both mentioned 11 times. Zakah and Barakah mentioned equal number of times. The Prophet Muhammad's name mentioned 4 times. Sharia mentioned 4 times. Right? So you've got these themes that are connected with each other, and the term, the day and night, by the way, same number of times. Man and woman, 24 times each. The intellect and light, same number of times. So you've got these terms that are related, that are mentioned an equal number of times. But again, this is a recited word. This was something that was memorized first and foremost. And even when it was available in the earliest generations in documented form, it was in the form of leather pouches and big parches, leaves, written on bones and things like that. So there was no way to do document research until much, much later. The most efficient way of preserving Quran was in terms of memorization. The last thing I promise, and then I'll let you go home, is this one. Really, when I first studied it, I had to turn everything away and I just had to go pray, because this is too much, at least for me. Let me see if I can find it so I can show you what it is. ICNA workshop. I was doing a competition between brothers and sisters at the ICNA convention in Atlanta 2 days ago. Okay, for those of you who read Arabic, for those of you who don't, listen carefully to the Arabic words and see if you find a pattern. Read the first word in red. Zakariya. Next word. Khafiya. Next word. Shaqiya. Next word. Waliya. Next word. Sharqiya. Next word. Nabiya. Then Hayya. Then. Okay. What, those of you who don't speak Arabic, did you notice something? Those of you who don't speak Arabic? Did you notice anything in the way the words sounded? They all did what? They rhymed. There was a rhyme scheme. This is Surah Maryam, Surah number 19, which is like a lot of other surahs in the Quran. The words are rhyming at the ends of the verses, or the ayat rather. Okay? ذِكْرُ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّكَ عَبْدَهُ زَكَرِيَّا إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ نِدَاءً خَفِيًّا, etc. And the ayat go on and the words keep rhyming and rhyming and rhyming and rhyming until you come down, and I skipped some ayat in this presentation, but read the next word in red. يَمْتَرُونَ. That doesn't rhyme with khafiyya or shaqiyya or, insiyya. None of those words. Now it's got a different rhyme scheme. يَمْتَرُونَ, فَيَكُونَ, مُسْتَقِيم, عَظِيم, مُبِين, يُؤْمِنُونَ, يُرْجَعُونَ. Different rhyme scheme. So you have the first many ayat dedicated to the same rhyme scheme. And then a different rhyme scheme all of a sudden in the same surah. When the subject was the same, the stories of the prophets, the rhyme scheme was the same. As soon as the subject changes, it's kind of like paragraph change. You hit space, then tab bar, move over, the indentation. The Quran doesn't have that. What does it have? A different rhyme scheme, because the subject has changed. So the listener can know that now a new subject is being talked about. But what's interesting is, when you want to refer back to the old subject, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. Stories of the prophets again. Old rhyme scheme again. A word that is not poetry. It's dealing with a very serious subject. But yet for the listener who listens carefully knows the subject is one because the rhyme scheme is one. And as soon as the rhyme scheme changes, the subject has advanced to something else. And when the rhyme scheme returns, it is because that tangent was necessary to complete the original subject. SubhanAllah. Give me another document that does that consistently throughout the text. Those of you who know Surah Naba. عَمَّا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. One paragraph. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ, go on, وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا. SubhanAllah. One subject is done, the other subject has its own rhyme scheme. And sometimes you'll have long passages with the same exact rhyme scheme with something interjecting in the middle that doesn't fit the rhyme scheme. You know why? Because that tangent is necessary for the rest of it and you have to pay attention. Allah will say, لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة. The subject is over. The next one. فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر. The next subject. بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيرة. You hear the rhymes at the ends? Then a break. Because for the next subject you need to understand something else. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. And then go back. Subhanallah. So these are some of the linguistic dimensions of the miracle of the Quran. The last thing that I want to leave you with, and most of all, the Quran is a miracle for the most unscientific reason. Because it transforms lives. To this day, there are people they'll be the last person you would think would be a Muslim. The last person on the face of this earth. One of my best friends in the world, his name is Abdullah, his original name is Mike. He was a neo-Nazi. Tattoos all over his body. He's memorizing Quran right now. He was actually he was up there, and he's actually talking to a couple of gangs in New York State prisons, and talking to them about Islam, some of the head leaders of the white supremacist crew, because they're old friends. Last person you would imagine would be a Muslim. And he's one of my best friends, and by the way, he married a black woman, by the way. And yeah. And they have 4 kids. Yeah, subhanAllah. And this man, you know how he became Muslim? He says, one day I had a fight with my mother, I punched her in the head, I got really mad at myself, so I had to find somewhere to go where the cops wouldn't look for me, so I went to the library. And I couldn't find anything, I had to make myself look normal, so I picked up a book and it happened to be the Quran. And I wasn't reading it, it was reading me. That's what he says. I wasn't reading it, it was reading me. And he took the Shahada in the library. SubhanAllah. The most weirdest experiences people have. When they read the Quran, it just completely transforms their lives. My daughters go to an Islamic kindergarten, preschool. I started it, I was the principal first. But I quit when we found a suitable replacement. The replacement is a woman. She's Japanese. She was born in Japan, she migrated here. And she was a very high-power executive downtown. She used to work on Wall Street. And you know how they have those vendors in Wall Street that sell like shawarmas and stuff like that? We call them chicken guys, right? So she was at one of those, and the guy was blasting like recitation of Quran. And she goes, "That's really interesting music. Where do you get that?" And the guy said, "Actually, I can tell you where to go." He pointed her to Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, where she ended up in a store, and they gave her a copy of the Quran, and she read it, and she took Shahada the next day, and her 2 sons are memorizing Quran, and she's the principal of an Islamic school now, right? The most unlikely people that you would think. No conversion, no preaching, nobody went to them and say, accept this or you're doomed. Nothing. They just went and read the Quran. And you know what's the craziest thing? After 9/11, there was a spike in conversions of people that out of curiosity started buying the copy of the Quran from Barnes & Noble. And this is not even the miraculous Arabic Quran. This is English translation of Quran. And people are just out of curiosity, what is this terrorist document? And they're reading it and they're finding, how can I miss this? I just met last week, I was in Atlanta. There was a convention there in Atlanta. And I met a young man, younger than me at least. He was... Now get this, his original name is Joshua, now his name is Yusha. He's originally Irish. He was studying Orthodox Christianity, studying to become a scholar. He was studying Hebrew, Aramaic, he was studying the ancient language, Latin even, to study the Bible in its original texts. And he heard a sermon one day about Islam and how it's an evil religion, right? And he thought to himself, after all the Bible I've studied, I can't think the Bible is the truth. But one thing's for sure, of all the other religions I'm going to explore, Islam will never be one of them, because it's an evil faith. He wasn't convinced of the Bible. The more he studied it, the less convinced he became. And then finally one day, the funny thing is, he was studying at a church. The wall to the masjid is about a foot apart. He was studying at this place. And he used to park his car in the masjid, at the mosque, and then go to church. For 10 years he was doing this, since he was an early teen. And then one day somebody saw him and said, "Hey, the Friday prayer is going on," because he was going on Friday to church to speak to his priest. And they didn't know that he's not a Muslim, because he's parking in the mosque parking lot. So he said, "Okay, whatever, I'll check it out." He goes in, listens to the sermon, takes Shahada, becomes a Muslim. So this, to me at least in our times, the strangest stories of people in the Western world. People that you would never have imagined coming to Islam. This is probably, to me at least, the greatest miracle of the Quran. The most profound miracle of the Quran. This is one you can't argue away from anyone, because they've experienced it themselves personally. They've personally experienced it themselves. Last but not least, I pray that anything that I have said was good and true, and that Allah accepts my intentions and your intentions for His cause. And I also pray that any mistakes that are made, first of all, I declare that they're my own, and second of all, I hope that you can all forgive me for my shortcomings, and that Allah also forgives me for them. Barakallahu li wa lakum.